Let's prepare ourselves. If you'll just prepare yourself. I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. And now if you just put your hand over your heart and extend your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that you may not always get what you're looking for, but you will always get what you're looking from. You may not always get what you're looking for, but you will always get what you're looking from. See, you and I, we have to stop looking for love and start looking from love. We have to stop looking for success and start looking from success. We have to start looking, instead of looking for our good, we have to start looking from our good. Because we may not always get what we're looking for, but we'll always get what we're looking from. We're in week 3 of a little series that I'm doing on a book by Dr. Wayne Dyer called Wishes Fulfilled, The Art of Manifestation. Just the title itself is so uplifting. It's so inspiring. Wishes fulfilled. Just the idea we could fulfill our wishes is something to make us stand up and kind of pay attention to. It's, he calls it the art of manifestation. I've come to think of manifestation more of a technology. It's a technology that we can learn, like any other technology on the planet. Some of us are going to, learn it quicker. Some of us are going to have to struggle a little more to learn it, but we can all learn the technology of manifestation. And his explanation of it, which I think is so brilliant, is built on this premise that we have to embody I am presence. We have to embody the notion that we are God. And that's not an easy notion for us to be able to to grasp. But when we can embody it, when we can embody the notion that we are God, then we will start looking from those very things that we want to see made manifest. Often I say in this church, what you are looking for is looking for you right now. What you are seeking is seeking you right now. And when we can look from the I am consciousness, it comes to us just like that. It comes to us so much faster. But I got an email this week that made me kind of realize I got to slow down on this I am consciousness. I got to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because there was a visitor who came last week, and I hope he's back again. But he also posted on our Facebook, and his message was this: look, there is one human being who is God on the planet, and his name was Jesus. It's not anybody else's name. And that is a prevalent reaction, because it's a teaching that came to us, for many of us, so deep when we were so young, that it's hard for me to get into this notion that I am God. Now look, Jesus would argue with this guy. Jesus would say, look, I already said, don't you know you're gods? I got that from the psalmist, who also said, you are gods. When we can begin to really embody this, when we can begin to embody it, we will understand that it is not a God in the sky who is pulling strings that we're trying to be. Look, we have dominion over one life, our life. That's the only dominion we have. And when we can begin to understand that, it's not so scary, because we're not trying to pull anybody else's purse strings, nor is there a God in the sky trying to pull our purse strings. And when we can get that, it's much easier for us to stand in I am consciousness. It's much easier for us to stand in the notion that we are God, that we are creator on the planet. And Jesus demonstrated this in his life over and over and over again. See, he didn't, when the people wanted wine to drink, he didn't say, well, wait a minute, I got to figure this out. He got into his I am consciousness, declared it so, and it was so. When the he wanted the blind to see or the paralyzed to walk, he didn't say, well, I really need to see your x-rays in order to be able to see if this is possible. And if your x-rays say, no, he declared it so, and it was so. Because he was in his I am consciousness. He understood the full authority under which he was living, and that's our job. To begin to understand and embody the full authority under which we are living. Of course, it's scary to think that if I'm God, then my mother-in-law is God too. That's scary business. See? It's scary because we're in that old notion that your mother-in-law has some dominion over, no dominion over you. When we can begin to see God in the true sense, in the sense that we understand it here in this church, that God is our source and our supply. That's what God is, the source and supply of that power that we need in order to be the creators that we were designed to be. The people who are doing the absolutely impossible or the next to impossible things in our lives and on the planet, those people are in touch with their I am consciousness, whether they call it that or not. They are in touch with their own power that is in and around and through them. Now, we understand it's not our ego, it's not our brain, it's not our body that is the I am consciousness. It's the spirit that is within us, which is the spirit that is within each of you. The same mind that was in Jesus the Christ is in your mind right now. And when we get that, when we embody that, then we begin to understand that we are and can be the I am consciousness. See, our job isn't to begin to struggle to become more successful as a painter or a poet or a dancer or a computer technician or a mechanical engineer. We are those things. And when we stop looking for those things and coming from the consciousness of those things, that's when we begin to see it made manifest in our life. That's the art of manifestation. That's the technology. Well, Dyer says in this book, first you have to get in touch with and embody the I am consciousness that you are, and then he asks us to build 5 foundational spiritual notions and practices. Last week we talked about the first one. We talked about building the practice, the spiritual foundation of imagination on the bedrock of our I am consciousness. When we begin, most of us use our imaginations to stay stuck, to stay small, to stay limited. But when we begin to use our imagination in the I am consciousness, then we begin to see our wishes fulfilled. We see that there is no limitation in this life outside the one that we create. That's the limitation in the life, the one that we've created. But there is no external limitation for us right now. When we begin to take our 5 senses and put them in a lockbox and just stay our imagination in the I am consciousness, it moves us in the direction of ignoring stats on what somebody's cancer looks like or what's going to happen. It moves us out of that consciousness. When we stay in the imagination in the I am consciousness, we move out of that notion that any age is too old to start a brand new career and be wildly, wildly successful. We move out of that. When we stay in the I am consciousness, if you're worried, I have a friend who's worried about her young child not making friends at school. When we stay in the I am consciousness and we use our imagination embedded in that, we will see our little children say, "Can I bring Jimmy home to play after school today?" And do you know how that makes you feel? It makes you feel absolutely fabulous when you plant your imagination in the I am consciousness. But here's what happens. Most of us plant it in history, either our own personal history, and if that's not bad enough, and for many of us it's plenty bad enough, And we limit it because of what we've done in the past. We can't even imagine ourselves going beyond that. And if that's not the case, what we do is we borrow from the group failure and we say, oh, well, it's never been done before and look how many people have tried it and poor dears. And no, when we stay in the consciousness of the I am, then we're able to do everything. When we don't, we stop trying. One of my favorite stories, I may have shared it here before. It's a story about a basketball coach of a high school basketball team who was attempting to motivate his players to persevere through a difficult season. Halfway through the season, he stood up before his team and said, "Did Michael Jordan ever quit?" And the kids hollered back, "No." "What about the Wright brothers? Did they ever quit?" And the kids hollered back, "No." "What about Beyonce? Did she ever quit?" And the boys yelled back, "No." "What about Elmer McAllister? Did he ever quit?" And the kids said, "What? Who's Elmer McAllister?" And the coach said, "See, you never heard of him because he quit." You have to know that Beyonce had troubles. You have to know that Michael Jordan had troubles. You had to know that the Wright brothers certainly had troubles getting their dreams fulfilled, their wishes fulfilled. But they kept their imagination in the I am consciousness. So the first one is imagination, the first foundation on which we put on this bedrock of I am. The second one is live from the end. Live from the end, as if it's already happened. In recovery, we call this acting as if. And those of you who are in recovery, you know the first time you went to a party sober, you had no idea how to behave, none zip. And so you had to act as if you knew what you were doing and you were having fun and knew how to dance and knew how to talk to people sober. See, didn't you? I know, you know that. See, we act as if we see it from the end. Why is that so important? It's so important because when you act as if and when you live from the end of your dream already fulfilled, it puts you into the present. It puts you smack dab into right now. And you have to live in that place of right now. When the I am consciousness, and we can stay in that and infuse it with living as if it already happened, things just begin to move in what Thoreau called uncommon hours. And you can wait, we can wait, and we can struggle. It's our choice. Many of us make that choice. Or we can train ourselves to really live at the end of our dreams and to move through the world as if that dream had already become manifest. We can start living in I am consciousness instead of I hope to be consciousness. And a lot of us are living in that I hope to be. And when this happens, that'll happen. And I hope it happens soon. When we begin to infuse our lives with living at the end in our consciousness, the end begins to come right now. For instance, if you want a Maserati, now look, go down there, leave all of your credit cards at home, leave anything at home that you could possibly go nuts on, but go and sit in that Maserati and then infuse your dream with that. Begin to live from the end of it. You know, one of my favorite stories from the Bible is in Numbers 14. And it's that time when Moses says to the 12 tribes of Israel, look, I want each of you to choose somebody from your tribe, and I want you to go and I want you to spy on the land of Canaan and see if there really is milk and honey in that land. And so the 12 guys go and they're peeping around and trying to see what's going on, and they even get in there and they know, my God, the land of milk and honey. It's so beautiful. The fruit is bigger and better and more pretty than any we've ever seen. And they cut some fruit to take back to Moses. And they go back to Moses, and 10 of the guys say, it's fabulous there. It's really great there. Here's some grapes. Eat these because you'll never get any more. Because we'll never get in there. Those guys are way too big, and we would never be able to defeat them and get in. 10 guys say this. And 2 guys say, don't be ridiculous. Of course we can get in. And they lived in consciousness, seeing themselves there. They lived from the end. And they said to Moses, of course we can get in. There's no problem there. It's beautiful. It's just waiting for us. And the Bible tells us this happens. 10 guys are defeated and have to stay in the desert with Moses, and 2 go on to their destiny of good. Why? Because they infused themselves with imagination, they had a dream, and they lived from that dream as if it were happening. It's a powerful story for us to be able to do that. So the first one is imagination, the second one is living from the end, and the third one I'm going to talk about this morning is feeling. Embodying into your dream, into your imagination, your feelings. Feel what it feels like. Feel what it feels like when your project gets legs under it. Feel what it feels like when that song that you've been working on just comes. Feel what it feels like when you are the parent of that little kid who comes home and says, I want Jimmy to come home and play tomorrow. Can he come home after school? Feel what that feels like. It feels fabulous. And that feeling is the juice, it's the gas, it's the grease of manifestation technology. What makes that manifestation technology powerful. Now, the good news is when you are living from the end of your dream, if you've really got a dream and you've infused your imagination in it and you're coming from I am consciousness and you're living from the end of that dream, then it's not difficult at all to feel the feelings. In fact, you have to work really, really hard not to feel the feelings. And some of us do that. Some of us have kind of taught ourselves not to really get into the feeling of good when we're in our dream, when something happens that we've worked for that's really good. You know, in this church, we one time had the brilliant idea, one of many brilliant ideas, that we would be the new bingo parlor of West Sacramento. And we were going to buy a new carpet with all the money. I mean, we were just thinking about all the money. We were going to pay off all the loans and the mortgage, and we were just going to be we have people around the block waiting for bingo here at CSA. So we even have to write legislation for the city of West Sacramento in order to get a bingo permit to do the bingo. That's how we were into it. But I didn't really know much about bingo. You know, I had played as a kid where you go, and my parents would go in the summer to a resort, and you'd put a bean on a card, and you had one card, and you it wasn't complicated. You went down the line or across the line, and sometimes you'd fill up the whole card. That was really a big deal. And so Don and I, we went to the bingo parlor over in Sacramento to see kind of what was going on so we could know how to make this a fabulous bingo parlor. And when I walked in, I saw hundreds, literally, of people, and they looked like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. You know, they were all there, and instead of beans, they had these daubers. And, you hold your dauber like this, see, and somebody would call a number on a microphone, and all the arms would go down, and they'd come back up. But they had like 5 cards, so they did it really quickly. But that wasn't really the point of the story. The point of the story, that just made me, I'm still thinking about it. But here's the point of the story. Then somebody would get a bingo. And a certain portion of the people, when they got a bingo, they'd yell, bingo, bingo, and they'd clap, and they'd be all excited, and they'd jump up and down, and they'd be so thrilled. And then other people who got bingo, bingo. It was like, wait, what is wrong here? Why aren't you jumping up and down for your good? And what we want you to do is to begin to embody the First Lady when she was jumping up and down. Because that's the kind of joy, that's the kind of enthusiasm that greases the wheels of manifestation. Now, I could tell you you see there's no bingo at CSA. So even though I infuse my dream with a lot of imagination, we have new dreams now. We've replaced those dreams. We're going to play golf instead. That makes more sense. So to benefit from this feeling of the practice of feeling your feelings, we really want you to get engaged in it. Because here's what it does. It increases it, and here's the second thing it does. It gives you courage. It gives you courage. When you are living from the end of your dream and you are feeling the feelings of it, then all of the naysayers who come around to tell you it's not going to happen. And you have to say, look, I'm working with a technology here. Of course it's going to happen. Dyer says in his book, it's not only can happen, it is inevitable that it will happen. Second story I want to just leave you with today is, I don't know why I'm so stuck on the Torah today, but in Samuel 1, 1 Samuel, there is a great story that many of you know about David and Goliath. And so the story that Mary Morrissey tells, I love her version of it. It's about the Philistines and the Israelites are going to have a war. And in those days, 3,000 years ago, what they would do is they would each take their armies and they would find a kind of a hillside with caves in it. And then the armies, one army would go to this hillside with caves, and one army would go with this hillside with caves, and then there was a strip of land in the middle, and that's where they would come down out of their caves during the day and fight. And so in this particular war, each army had 136,000 soldiers. And so they would come down in waves. And if you were in the front wave, it was a bad day for you if you were in that front wave. But this was a different war. And so, but nobody knew it yet. And so the man named Jesse sends his two sons off to war. They were conscripted by King Saul, and he sends his two boys off, and he has a third son who's an older teenager, but still a teenager. And he is the sheep herder of the family. And so the two boys go off to war, and it gets time that they're all settled in, and the war is going to start happening. So the father says, I'm worried about my older sons. David, I want you to take some food to them. I want to make sure they're feeling strong and they're healthy. And so take some food to them. And so young David goes off to where that side of the Israelites' side of the hillside is, and he's looking for his brothers. And as he's looking for his brothers, he begins to hear this story at each of the campfires, that instead of a bloodbath war, one of the Philistines, who happens to be a giant, comes down and yells up to the Israelite side and says, look, if one of you will come and fight me, we don't have to have a bloodbath. Just one of you. And if you win, we will serve you. And if I win, you will serve us. Well, the guy's a giant. So they're saying, what kind of fair thing is that? And so he goes to each of the campfires, and he's beginning to hear this story. And part of the story is King Saul says, whoever will be brave enough to fight this man and win will have the hand of my daughter, the princess, and will also never have to pay taxes, and will also ever have to, and will have all the cattle and the horses that he ever wants. And so the kid begins to hear this. And these guys on the campfire are saying, I'm not going. I'm not doing it. And so as the teenager begins to hear it, he says, well, what's the princess like? Well, she's gorgeous. And every campfire he goes to, he says, well, tell me more about the princess. And so they tell him more about the princess, and he starts just focusing on the princess. He doesn't even know what Goliath is, so he finds his campfire with his brothers finally and gives them the food, and he says, I'm thinking about going down there. And the guy says, what, you're a runt. You're not going anywhere. So he grabs him he says, have you seen Goliath? And the guy says, no. He grabs him and he takes him over and he says, do you see that giant down there shouting up at us? That's Goliath. You're not going. And so the kid says, you're right, I'm not going. So he runs back to the campfires. But then he starts hearing more about the princess and thinking more about the princess. And finally, one of the guys in the campfire says, yeah, and the princess bathes in perfume every day. Oh, well. Now, this is a church, but you know what a young man is thinking at this particular time. about the princess, and he's forgotten about Goliath because he's focused on the end of the dream. See? He's focused there. And because he's focused on the end of the dream, he picks up 5 smooth stones. You know the end of the story. Picks up 5 smooth stones. And that's important. We don't talk about that enough in churches. He picks up 5 because he's prepared to be perseverant if the first one doesn't work. But it does. He takes a slingshot. Oh, first he goes to Saul and says, I want to be the guy. And Saul's a little concerned. He says, well, take my armor at least. And he tries the armor along, and it's too clumsy. And he says, no, I want to be who I am. I want to be who I am. I'm a shepherd, and I know a slingshot. So he goes and he gets the 5 smooth stones, and he rears back, and the first one beams him and kills him. You and I have Goliaths in our lives, and we've made them much bigger than they actually need to be. If we will be reminded and let David teach us, live from the end of your dream. Find your princess in this life and live from that place. Let's take this message into prayer, knowing that we are in the heart and the mind and the love of the Most High God. That is not God as and us, but God as us. Just like a cup of ocean water is just ocean, we are just God. We are not all of God. But God is in and through and around us. It is us. I give thanks for that. I give thanks for Wayne Dyer. I give thanks for this church. I just give thanks. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.